Today is Thursday, October 21st, 2010. I am interviewing Jim Paul. He is 81 years old, and he was born on July 11th, 1929. My name is Tyler Robison. I'll be the interviewer. Jim Paul is my grandfather. Grandpa, could you state for the recording what war were you served in?
Korean War.
What branch of service did you serve in?
In the Navy.
What was your rank?
Aviation Ordnanceman 3rd class.
Okay. Where did you serve?
Most of the time in Japan, 21 months in Japan, and then I was aboard the Bonhomme Richard for about 6 months, and I was back in the States at Quonset Point, Rhode Island for about 5 months, and then we went aboard the Bennington and went on a Mediterranean cruise, and was up around Iceland and a Mediterranean cruise, and in France, Italy, visited Portugal, France, Italy, Greece, Spain, Sicily.
Okay. How many years were you in service?
Not quite 4. Couple months less than 4.
Okay.
I enlisted for 4 years, but when I got out, the Korean War was over, and they were deactivating a lot of the ships and stuff, and they were letting guys out early because we weren't needed.
Okay. So you served in the Korean War. Where were you living at the time you were enlisted?
When I enlisted, I was in Wabash, right here in Wabash.
Okay. How did you happen to enlist?
I was going to get drafted. At that time, we had a draft, and I decided I did not want to go in the Army. The Korean War started that summer, and I guess I was just kind of a coward. Like, they were just guys were going to boot camp, in Army boot camp in Korea, and it was bad. I took the easy way out. I joined the Navy.
Okay. Did anyone else in your family serve in the military?
My dad was in the Navy in World War II, and my brother was also in the Navy about a year after I went in. He went in.
Okay. When you left for the Navy, where was the first place you went for training?
Boot camp was at Waukegan, Illinois. Great Lakes Naval Training Station, Waukegan, Illinois.
Okay. What was your biggest adjustment?
I guess just the discipline and being told what to do all the time.
Okay. What were the sleeping adjustments like?
Sleeping
Adjustments? Yeah.
In boot camp, you had 2 bunks high, and it wasn't that bad. But aboard ship, you were super crowded. Your bunks were 5 high and just room in them to turn over. And it was amazing how many guys you could get in a size of a living room just for sleeping. It was, but you were super crowded. All right, we had a locker that was about 2 foot square, about like one of these little refrigerators that you see. Not even that big. That's where you had all your clothes in there.
For each person?
Each person had a locker.
Okay. What was your daily schedule like?
That's what?
Daily schedule like?
It was just like a job. In boot boot camp, of course, you got up about 5:30 or 6 and you got cleaned up and shaved and done calisthenics. Then you went to breakfast, and then you had classes or calisthenics or marching or something all the time. We had numerous classes on knot tying, history of the Navy, all kinds of things, firefighting, and then the lights were out, I think, at 9 o'clock. Really, you were ready to go to bed, but then after you got up that early, you didn't hardly have a minutes that you weren't doing something. But when you were aboard ship, it was a lot like a job. You'd get up in the morning and do your job, and then maybe you'd have a watch. Every fourth day or so, you might have a 4-hour watch or something to do. But it was work. You just worked and worked. Like I said, we worked aboard the planes, and it's like a job, regular job.
Okay. What was the food like?
Food, some places was excellent food, and some places it wasn't so good. The first day we left Wabash and went to Indianapolis, and then we went back to up to Great Lakes on a bus, and our breakfast was soft-boiled eggs and not hash browns, corned beef hash. And to this day, I can't stand soft-boiled eggs. I love eggs any way, shape, or form, but not soft-boiled. But like I say, you're so hungry that you eat it. I mean, you have no way to get anything else to eat. And when you're in boot camp, if it shoves in front of you, you eat it or go hungry.
If you ever did have a break, where was the first place you went when you were on break?
Like, you mean aboard ship?
Yeah.
We had movies at night, and you read, and you could go up and walk on the flight deck or something like that, but there wasn't too many things to do. Reading mostly.
And,
reading.
Off the ship?
Depending where you were, there was all kinds of things to do, just like a civilian. I mean, you could go to movies, you could go to any sightseeing trips when you were overseas, bus trips and beer joints and anything you wanted.
Okay. Where were you sent after training?
I went from Great Lakes. We graduated on Saturday, and that evening I was on a flight to San Francisco, Treasure Island. It was right by Alameda, San Francisco, Alameda. It was a Navy, everybody, they sent you there, and then you went all over the world to different places. And my orders were for FFT, for further transfer, Yokosuka, Japan, which I figured I was an Airedale. I was Green Stripes. That was it. I wanted something in the air. We had a choice of seaman or other things, and I wanted the airman. I came out of boot camp designated airman, which meant I would either go to aboard a carrier or I would go to a Navy air station someplace. So I come out for further transfer to Yokosuka, Japan. Yokosuka, Japan was another place where these guys all come in, and they all sent you to all different bases, different ships, etc., etc. And I thought I would end up on a carrier. We had, I think, probably about 10 carriers over there then. We were flying strikes into Korea. But instead, I got a naval air station at Sugi, Japan, which was, when we got there, was a very rough station because they had just made it a U.S. air base, Navy air base, about 6 weeks before we got there, and it was an old Japanese air base from World War II that had basically nothing done to it. But it was one of the few places in Japan that we hadn't annihilated about. It was, everything was pretty much intact. In fact, MacArthur landed there when he went in to take charge after the war in 1945. He landed there. It was one of the few places that you could land in Japan. Anyway, it was a Navy air base there. We had magazines where we had bombs, rockets, all munitions of types, and they also had. I was in the ship's company, which meant we had a rifle range and a pistol range, and all the munitions and stuff on base, we were in charge of. And that's what I done. That's where I worked for that type of stuff. It was, and we also, that base actually had a FASRON squadron, which is Fleet Air Service Squadron, which repaired airplanes. Like a lot of the planes would come in there, would use, some of them were still flyable. That were due for overhauls, overhaul the engines and whatever needed and replacement parts and such and such. And we had a reconnaissance squadron there of P-2V Neptunes, which there were some in the air. I don't know, 1 or 2 or 3 of them in the air at all times, flying up along the Korean coast through the Sea of Japan, the Korean coast, and up along Manchuria. Was stationed out of there.
Okay. What was life like on the carrier?
Some days it was very easy, and some days it was very difficult. We worked hard. If the weather was good, we were flying strikes into Korea. Sometimes 4 or 5 a day. We would load up the planes with bombs, ammunition, this and that. Pilots go out, and about 2.5 hours they would be back. We'd redo that stuff all again, depending on what targets they were after, what kind of munitions we put on them, like rockets, or what size kind of bombs, or stuff like that. And then we get chow when we could. It was hard work, but just work.
What were your duties?
Well, I kind of explained it like aboard ship.
Oh, okay.
Like that was pretty much what we done. But like a lot of days when the weather was bad, or this or that, you done nothing. Maybe a little maintenance work, and we would sit around and play cards or play checkers or pinochle or something.
Okay. What countries did you visit?
When I left Japan, come back to the States with my squadron, we went on a med cruise, Mediterranean, and we went up around Iceland first, and then went down to the Mediterranean. We stopped at Gibraltar, and then when we were into France, about 3 different ports in France, and about 3 of them in Italy, and we were in Barcelona, Spain, and Istanbul, Turkey, and Barcelona, Spain.
You want to just
Barcelona, Greece, I believe it was. Barcelona, Greece. Then we were in Nice, France, and Cannes, and Marseille. In Italy, we were into La Spezia, Genoa, and Naples. And a lot of these places, especially in France and Italy, was still a lot of war damage was visible yet. This was in 1953.
Okay. What did you learn by visiting other countries?
like I say, first of all, I realized quickly how nice we had it here in the United States because, like I say, this was back in the early 50s, and they hadn't recovered from World War II yet. Their economies were shot, and they were just getting back. Uh, I realized how nice we have it here, our standard of living and such and such. I mean, those people, a lot of them were just struggling to find something to eat.
Um, how did you how did you stay in touch with family back home?
Uh, Mail, right? I wrote a couple times a week, and then you didn't have the telephones and the computers and all this stuff. And when I was in the States, I would call home periodically. Write some and call home. But things are a lot different now, communication-wise, than it was then.
Were you ever in danger?
I was never in danger of getting shot at that I knew. I did one aboard ship. It was very hazardous. We were always on the flight deck during operations, and we were loading rockets, and rockets were very dangerous to handle. You had to be right in under them when the planes were turning up to plug them in, and that was very dangerous. Nobody wanted that job, but you got it once in a while. It was just dangerous. But the main thing on the flight deck was it was just like you'd have 70 or 80 planes with their engines running, jets and prop planes, which mine were prop planes, and you just had to be careful.
What do you remember most about your time at sea?
I probably the most I remember was when we were up around Iceland, flying practice strikes. I don't know into where or what, but the sea up there was incredibly rough. There are days we couldn't operate because the sea was too rough. The carrier pitched too much to land planes or take off planes. But one day we set out. This is very memorable. This sticks out in my mind. I can still remember it. We sent all of our planes up, which probably in the vicinity of 75 to 80 planes. I don't remember for sure. And a fog set in. Horrible fog. Just you couldn't see 50 feet. And again, it isn't like it is now. You couldn't, if the weather was bad, you didn't have your ground control approach and stuff like you have now. You had some radar to help you, but you had to have visibility at the ship for them to land. They couldn't direct you right into a landing like they can now. And the guys were out there, all these guys. And the chaplain on board ship come on the PA system and said, ask for a prayer for these guys that were up there because they were in trouble. And the fog lifted enough that they landed. Every one of them landed safely. My plane, Mr. Conley, had 7 gallons of fuel in his tank when he made it back. We never lost a plane, but that was, I don't know, something.
Okay.
Near miracle, I don't know, not quite that much, I guess, but it's incredible.
Okay.
Because it went, like up there was no place to go. Like a lot of times you were with the fleet, maybe like some of the other carriers would be clear, they could have landed there, or you could go into Iceland to a base, but I don't think we had any base. But anyway, a lot of times there were alternate places to go, but where you were up there was no place to go. They had to come back to that ship or ditch in the ocean.
Who are some friends you made while you were? And where were they from?
My best friend would be up from the name of the town is Fish Creek, Wisconsin, which is up in Door County. And Pete and I were very good friends. We see each other. Well, I haven't seen you for about 3 years, but we see each other periodically. Have another good friend that lives out in Albany, New York. And I have another one that lives in Hilton Head, North Carolina. But I see them, not Pete. Pete don't go to them. But we have reunions every year. The Bennington and the Bonhomme Richards have reunions. We go every couple of years or so, depending. They're usually on the coast. When they're out on the west coast, we don't go to them, but they've Niagara Falls, and I've been to Niagara Falls, and Pensacola, Florida, and Asheville, North Carolina, and I've been to several of them. Nashville, Tennessee was one. The ones that are decent close. I don't want to fly and rent a car and stuff. I prefer to drive. But we have a lot of fun just sitting around talking and reminiscing about things. And I had two other good friends. Bill Alden was from Cape Cod, and he got killed in an automobile accident in 1969. And I had another super good friend, Gene Denman, from East Windsor, New Jersey, that we used to go out and visit them one year. Then he would come out the next year, and he died about 10 years ago. But I still got 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
I've still got 3 left. But I don't know how long that'll be, because in fact, 2 of them aren't in too good of health. So, anytime something could happen to them.
Where were you when the war ended?
I was back in the States. When we come back from Korea, back in the States, in 90, I can't remember exactly. I was back in the States. I wasn't over there then.
How did you get back home?
We had, like, when I would come home on leave, we would come from, my base then was Quonset Point, Rhode Island. And I would train, and sometimes bus. A long distance, you took the train. But, airplanes, you didn't travel like that much then. It was trains.
Okay, was it hard to return to civilian life?
No. No, it wasn't. It was an adjustment. You weren't up. It took a while to calm down. You're uptight when you're in the Navy all the time in the service. Usually you're uptight and a lot of tension and such and such. But so it wasn't difficult to get used to it. You just adjusted. it was a lot of freedom after being in the service. I mean, being your own boss was pretty much different.
Okay. How has life being in the military affected your life?
Well, like I said a while ago, it makes you appreciate things a lot more. Tyler, you appreciate things more. You realize that we have it so much easier here. I say again, this goes back right after World War II. Those foreign countries were bankrupt and blowed up and, in sad shape. A lot of them had a lot of bombings and buildings destroyed, and this and that, and their economy was nothing. They were recovering from the war, and of course we win, so we had it pretty easy. It's
What lessons have you learned?
What lessons have I learned? Well, I guess I know when I went in, my dad said, been through all this, he said, you'll be fine. He said, just do as you're told, keep your mouth shut. That's true a lot even in civilian life. If you don't let your mouth run before you think, you're a lot better off. I don't know, like I say, the lesson you learn from it, it's you learn the discipline, which is, and you just, I don't know.
Tell me about these medals that we have.
Oh,
right
those. They aren't really medals. They are, but they aren't. You get these when you're in that war zone, that particular war zone. And this one down here is a Korean medal. This is this is Korean medal. This is the UN. This is the Asiatic Pacific. That's the Japanese occupation, which in 1950 we were still occupying Japan. The peace treaty had not been signed in 1950, and that's good conduct, which you get if you get a couple years and don't get yourself in any trouble. You get these really, except the good conduct. When you're in that war zone for 30 days, you get all these. You're entitled to those 4, because for the Korea and Japanese and the UN and the Asiatic Pacific is all. You just earn those.
Okay. Would you like to tell any stories?
Oh. It was when we were aboard ship in Korea. We had the Korean War. The Bonhomme Richard had a good reputation as a good ship, and good record of everything. And that we were over there in flying combat strikes for 7 months, about 7.5 months, and we never lost a man. When we come, a man or a plane, when we come back to this, come back to the States, we went aboard the Bennington. Everybody said Bennington, that's a jinx ship. We went on that ship, and we're out about 4 days, and we rendezvoused with some other carriers from some British and French ships, and went to Iceland. And the first, our planes were these F4Us, prop planes. They flew those off. The jets had to be catapulted off. So these were always the first off. And our first plane that started off, it got about halfway down the flight deck and it started missing out and sputtering, but you can't put on the brakes and stop. And it got airborne and it went out. It would go right down to the water and it would come up and down, and then plunk. After about a mile or two out, it went in the water. They got the pilot. He was safe. But anyway, we lost on that med cruise when we were just practicing stuff, not in combat stuff. We lost 7 guys. We had 7 killed aboard there. With crashes. One guy walked into a prop. Another one, they never did find him. I don't know what happened. Evidently he went over the side, and then the rest of them were crashes. There was, I think 5 of those were killed in one crash. The plane come in short, hit the fantail, and got on fire and slid up the deck, and it killed the pilot lived. The last I knew, the pilot lived. Was still banged up pretty bad. The pilot made it, but there was 5 others that didn't make it.
Okay, well, thank you for your time and serving our country.
You're welcome.